All right, let's dive right into this explainer. Today, we're exploring the absolutely fascinating and honestly sometimes horrifying lengths our ancestors went to for a glow-up roughly 12,000 years ago. You know, if you think your morning skincare routine is tedious or those pinching shoes you wear to weddings are bad, wait until you see what your ancestors considered the absolute pinnacle of beauty. Back then, looking good wasn't just about feeling confident when you stepped out of the cave. As we're going to see, it was often about risking lead poisoning, literally crushing your own skull, and accepting a crazy high risk of fatal infection, all in the name of looking hot.
And this really puts things into perspective. While we complain about our modern grooming habits, the biological desperation to signal "pick me" hasn't really changed one bit. Think about it. Our ancient ancestors painstakingly filed their teeth into sharp points with rough stones, wincing in agony while checking their reflection in a muddy puddle. And today? Well, today we sit in sterile dentist chairs, dropping thousands on veneers, or cheerfully injecting Botox into our foreheads. The environments couldn't be more different, sure, but that fundamental drive, the extreme lengths we'll go to for social approval, is incredibly consistent across all of human history.
Beauty is pain, or so the saying goes, right? We've all heard it. Usually we apply it to a bad waxing experience or maybe a stiff collar. But before we rush to judge our ancestors as primitive or, overly vain, we have to look way past the surface level absurdity of these historical beauty hacks. We actually have to dig into the subconscious survival mechanisms at play here. This isn't just about ancient humans being goofy for the sake of it. What we're really looking at is a deep psychological analysis of human nature.
So, what does this all mean? Well, it proves this isn't just some historical freak show, it's actually a science-based reconstruction of sexual selection. Enter costly signaling theory. This is this totally fascinating concept from evolutionary biology. Basically, it explains that when you look past the sheer horror of these body modifications, you find they were actually highly calibrated, subconscious survival mechanisms. They were specifically designed to prove one very important thing to the rest of the tribe. Hey, I have great genes. By paying a massive physical cost, you proved you were strong enough to afford it in the first place.
Okay, moving into Section 1, Extreme Ancient Beauty Hacks. Counting down the most painful status symbols, let's count down the absolute dumbest things ancient humans did to look attractive and see exactly why your brain is still hardwired to do them today.
Coming in at number 4 is artificial cranial deformation. In ancient Mesoamerica, parts of Eurasia, and even ancient Egypt, elite families would take their infants, who, still had soft, pliable skulls, and tightly bind them with bandages. They physically forced the baby's head to grow into this tall, elongated, almost alien-like shape. Wild, right? But fast forward to today, and what do? We use extreme shapewear, waist-training corsets, or cheek fillers to completely alter our natural bone structure and silhouette. We're still out here trying to mold our bodies into idealized, unnatural shapes.
Now you might be wondering, why go through the excruciating trouble of binding a baby's head? Well, the crucial point is that enduring this agonizing process yielded an evolutionary status signal that permanently separated you from the rock-carrying masses. That elongated skull proved, without a shadow of a doubt, that you were part of the elite. It signaled to everyone that you literally didn't have to do manual labor. It acted as this permanent, completely unforgeable VIP badge. You couldn't fake it. Your very skeleton proved it. It was a status signal so extreme, it literally reshaped human bone.
Moving on to number 3, the lethal glow. For centuries, pale skin was the ultimate standard of beauty. Why? Because it proved you were wealthy enough to stay out of the sun and avoid working in the fields. To pull this off, ancient Greeks and Romans used something called ceruse. This was a thick, chalky paste made of white lead and vinegar. Yes, they were smearing literal neurotoxins on their faces every single day. And the modern equivalent? Just think of carcinogenic tanning beds, toxic diet pills, or unregulated skin bleaching creams.
Which brings us to what we call the danger paradox. That ceruse they used, it was unbelievably toxic. The leads slowly rotted their skin, caused their hair to fall out in clumps, and eventually, well, it killed them. But they kept smiling and slapping more of it on. Even though the lead was literally lethal, the psychological paradox remains. The more dangerous, expensive, and inaccessible a beauty trait is, the more immensely valuable it becomes as a signal to the tribe. Dangerous beauty equals immense social value, precisely because not just anyone can survive it.
For number 2, we're looking at the shark smile. Long before modern dentistry was even a glimmer in our eyes, ancient cultures in the Americas and Southeast Asia would file their teeth down into sharp, jagged points. And if that wasn't enough, they'd use crude stone drills to bore holes directly into their front enamel just to jam precious gemstones like jade and pyrite into their smiles. Oh, and remember, this was the ancient world. Zero anesthesia. Imagine getting veneers or braces today, but it's performed by a guy in the woods with a rock and a stick. You're sweating buckets, in absolute agony, but just sitting there giving a thumbs up. But beyond just trying to look like a fearsome jaguar, there was a deeply ingrained biological reason for this. Enduring this agonizing, highly infection-prone pain without flinching wasn't just some random aesthetic choice. It was a hardcore evolutionary test. It served as a direct proxy for a robust immune system. By letting someone drill into your skull and stuff a rock in it without dying of a massive infection, you were broadcasting incredibly high genetic fitness. You were basically screaming to potential mates, hey, if I can survive this drill, I can easily survive the winter.
All right, Section 2, the high-stakes climax, unveiling the #1 spot in evolutionary beauty. We've officially reached the climax of our explainer, moving from these terrifying physical body modifications to the ultimate biological concept that underpins and explains every single one of them.
So we absolutely have to ask the ultimate question here. Why do humans do things that actively damage their bodies just to look attractive? I mean, why endure agonizing scarification, inject toxic tattoo inks into our dermis, or later in history engage in horrific practices like foot binding or wearing rib-crushing corsets? What is the underlying scientific law governing all this self-inflicted damage?
Well, the answer is found in a concept proposed back in 1975 by a biologist named Ahmad Zahavi. He called it the Handicap Principle. Zahavi looked at the peacock. Now, peacocks have these massive, heavy, brightly colored tails. In the wild, that tail makes them incredibly slow and super easy for predators to spot and catch. So, why on earth would evolution select for that? Zahavi's brilliant realization was that the tail is a deliberate handicap. The peacock is essentially boasting to the peahen, saying, look at how incredibly strong, fast, and genetically flawless I am. I can easily survive out here, even with this massive, ridiculously huge target strapped to my back.
And this brilliantly illustrates that taking on a massive physical or financial handicap taps into the exact same psychological bug today as it did 12,000 years ago. Think about it. We've just traded infection-prone tattoos and manually deformed skulls for ridiculously expensive sports cars and 6-inch heels that actively ruin our spinal alignment and make it literally impossible to run away from danger. It's the exact same handicap principle in action, just remixed for the 21st century.
So, the crucial point to take away is that none of these horrifying acts were mistakes. They were highly calculated maneuvers to prove worth to the tribe. Our ancestors didn't just want to look pretty or handsome. No, they wanted to look biologically expensive. By willingly taking on a massive physical handicap, they were broadcasting a completely unforgeable signal of their own genetic superiority. They were proving, beyond a doubt, that they had excess energy, a killer immune response, and resources to burn.
Which brings us to Section 3, the modern mirror. The tools have changed, but the biology hasn't. Let's strip away the loincloths and the centuries of history and take a good, hard look directly at ourselves today.
We might laugh at primitive tribes binding skulls, eating lead, and drilling their teeth. We love to call them primitive. But ancient skull binding? That's simply become digital bone warping with Instagram filters to fake elite status. Ancient lead makeup has evolved into botulinum toxin. Yep, Botox. We literally inject a lethal poison into our foreheads to freeze our muscles, enduring poison for the mere illusion of youth. And drilling teeth for Jade? Today, we undergo completely elective cosmetic surgeries, risking the exact same fatal infections our ancestors faced, all in the name of beauty. The tools have definitely been upgraded, sure, but that deep biological desperation to signal pick me remains exactly the same.
Which brings us to our final thought. The next time you feel a little insecure about your appearance, or you catch yourself spending an hour getting ready just to run to the grocery store, don't beat yourself up. Actually, as this quote perfectly summarizes, you aren't vain. You're just a peacock trapped in a primate's body trying to convince the tribe you're worth the calories. So I'll leave you with this to ponder today. What invisible, biologically expensive tail are you dragging behind you to impress your tribe?